This week on Work in Progress, we have the opportunity to talk to employees from You Need a Budget, lovingly known as YNAB, an IT company that builds budgeting software for the web, Android, and iOS devices. They help people break the paycheck to paycheck cycle, get out of debt, and gain total control of their money. Now, 100% of people consider YNAB a great place to work. And in 2020, they ranked #1 on our small and medium-sized workplaces best company list, and number 17 on Fortune's best workplaces in technology for small and medium-sized businesses. So they know what they're doing. We are so excited to be joined by Amanda Gardner, support specialist for YNAB, and Chance Gurr, chief operating officer for YNAB. Thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks.
So we were really inspired by the way YNAB has cared for its people and their families during the pandemic, and by also how the company has long been a remote first culture at a time when many companies are struggling to manage virtual operations. So since the founding in 2004, you all have been fully remote, no main office, everyone works virtually, and now with over 100 employees in 33 states and several countries, your company culture is still going strong. So of course, we wanted to get these stories firsthand. So I'll hand it over to you, Ed, to start us off.
Thanks, Julian. Amanda, let's start with you. And I'd love to hear briefly what you do for YNAB, how long you've been at the company, and what kind of challenges the pandemic has meant for you and your family.
Yeah, so I've been at YNAB for over 2 years now, and I work in support. So I work 75% of my day directly with our customers, both chat and email platforms, and the other 25% of my day in meetings, working on projects and that kind of thing. And YNAB has been such an awesome place to work all the time, but especially during the pandemic, when so many companies were going remote. My husband ended up coming home to work at home. Our kids were at home. So, we tried to come up with a schedule for all of us to be in charge. Who's in charge of the kids? Who's in charge of making sure they get on their Zoom meetings at different times? And my husband's job was one where the phone rang and he had to drop whatever he was doing and go deal with work. And it was so nice that YNAB was so flexible for me that it enabled me to step in and be there for them and help them when they needed help most, and to get their schoolwork done.
That's great. So you tell me a little bit more about the flexibility shown to you during this time, Amanda. What particular ways were you able to kind of serve your kids' needs when you needed to?
Yeah, so YNAB was super flexible with both times of day we were working as well as days of the week. And it was helpful to me, not only did my manager tell me, to do what I needed to do, but we also heard from the executive team that it was okay to rearrange your work day, take some time off if you needed time off, and that to just recognize that everybody was struggling. Even though we've always been remote, still the world was different. Most of us then had kids at home that we weren't used to having at home. And even those without kids, there's just a lot more stress in the world. And so I would work random hours of the day. And then I also switched to working both weekend days and took 2 weekdays off during the week so that I could be more present for my kids and their schooling.
That's great. And that's real flexibility that kind of stands out at YNAB, I think, where a lot of companies might doubt that they could actually change the work week so dramatically. So impressive there. And Julian, do you want to ask Chance a bit about kind of the wider culture at YNAB that allows that to happen for folks like Amanda?
Of course, yes. Now, let me ask you a question based on something that we spoke about just before we got on camera. You said something that was really important, and Ed and I have done research around this as well, but you said we trust first, like that you give trust first. How did you come to that place? Because that's not typically where leaders start, with trusting people first. How did you or the company get to that place that's where you start?
That's a really great question. As a remote company, you kind of have no other option, but you lean into it, and it's really important. People will ask me all the time, "You're a fully remote company. How do you know if your people are working?" And I say, if that's the question that you're asking, you have a whole different set of problems on your hands about how to know if people are doing good work without seeing them in their cubicle. But we start from a place of trust. We've given our people a ton of autonomy over their work and have just the highest level of trust in our team. So they know that when they need to take some time off or take care of something personal or take care of themselves, that's okay, because we trust them to make the best decisions for them and for their work. We know they do amazing work. We only hire people who do. And you stick out like a sore thumb if you don't. So, of course, the pandemic provided lots of need for that trust and that flexibility that Amanda mentioned earlier. We would talk a lot as an executive team, often about, in the throes of the beginning of that pandemic and what people needed to hear from us. And so in the most genuine of ways possible, we would intentionally share how, we would do internal videos from the executive team to share how we were feeling and how we were doing personally and what things that we were struggling with, and just trying to be really vulnerable, showing that we weren't on our A game most days at work, because that was the truth. Everyone knows it's the truth. So, and really, I just think it released a lot of pressure. It was one of the things I think was actually really helpful. And it gave people permission to not have great days at work, or to need to take some time off.
Wow. I mean, you just gave a masterclass in trusting leadership, high trust leadership, as we call it. Thank you for that. That was a great explanation of how and why you all did that. I'll turn it back over to you, Ed.
Thanks, Julian. I want to build on what you were just talking about there, Chance, in terms of, so you've talked about some of the importance of leaders showing vulnerability, acknowledging this isn't going to be a time where you can bring your best necessarily. You might have other duties like the teaching you mentioned. What other lessons might you have for companies that are still learning how to go remote? You all have had 15 years, 16 years of this, but a lot of companies are, they're still struggling to figure out how to manage their people, how to create a sense of connection. What are some of the top things you would say to companies that may face another 6 months or more of a largely virtual approach to work?
I've said for a while that I believe that you win the battle for a remote workforce that works especially well in the hiring process. That's where you win that battle. You hire people who love their work, who are great at what they do, who know no other way than to do amazing work, and who are great fits for your core values to begin with. So that can't be overstated. I feel like you win. That just can't be overstated. It's the consistency of doing lots and lots of small things. And being fully remote, I do believe is also easier than having half co-located and half working remote as well.
Thanks for that comprehensive response, Chance. And it sounds like you said a lot of small things that add up when you do them consistently. And Amanda, let me ask you, as someone who's working on the front lines, what ways would you advise folks to manage this remote workplace experience, especially for those who haven't done it for very long, or are facing many more months of it?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've learned is not trying to recreate the wheel. Try to learn from people who've already done the remote thing like we have, or other companies. My sister's a good example of that. So she works for a company that has never been remote before. And after the virtual retreat we had that Chance mentioned, she actually came to me and asked me for advice on ways that their company could implement some of the things that we were doing. So I told her about the virtual escape room that we did, or the icebreaker activities, different things that companies that have never faced this before, aren't used to looking for information like that or resources like that. And obviously some of the things that we did during the virtual retreat aren't things that YNAB had done before either, since we're used to doing in-person retreats. But we have an awesome operations team that put in a lot of effort to try to simulate that in-person retreat experience and in a virtual environment. And they did an awesome job. Yes, I would love to see everybody face to face, but I appreciate that YNAB wants to keep all of us safe, and that they put in the extra effort, to make sure that we could still have some of that face-to-face time, even if it was virtually. That still means a lot to us as employees, that the company takes that time to make sure that we feel connected.
That makes a lot of sense, and we're just inspired by the stories you all have shared with us today, the way the company has taken care of folks like you, Amanda, and that broader culture that has been remote first for the get-go. Really, I think you guys have a lot to offer to other companies that are struggling in this virtual world. So we would encourage you to check out their site. You know, we've got some other articles on our site about YNAB and the way they've risen to the #1 spot of the SMB, Small and Medium Business Best Workplaces list. So congratulations again for that. And we want to thank everyone for viewing this episode of Work in Progress. And again, we're trying to help folks get through this difficult time, keep it real, hear some of the real stories, and really make progress toward our mission here at Great Place to Work, which is to build a better world through great places to work for all everywhere. See you next time.